In this video, we're going to go over how to defend C site on Cauchy Street. The first position we'll cover is C long. For nades, I would recommend running Interceptor plus slow, frag, or heal grenade if your team doesn't have any healing and you're playing a more supportive role. The slow or frag grenade is usually better than the wind nade, since the wind nade spots are a bit limited on this map and can be easily covered by a slow nade as long as you properly hold to make sure that they can't power through your slow. If you can do that, then the slow grenade just lasts longer and is way more versatile than the wind nade. I would only recommend the wind nade if you can't trust your teammates to hold a spot like sewer and you want to 100% guarantee it'll get stuff. Your other teammate, who will usually play around sewer, will want to run double stall nade, but we'll get to that later. So at the beginning of the round, you're going to come to this box so that you can make this jump to this forward cover, the third person around the corner. I recommend going on top of the box because the angle is a lot better and you aren't peeking as wide. If you spot a push, you can go for a quick peek, but I wouldn't do it against any sniper since it's not worth the risk. Once you start giving space, you have multiple positions you can fall back to. The safest option is to go into heaven. You'll come here if you want to play more passive or if you're unsure how safe sewer is. From heaven, you'll have direct contact with your rotators and can shoot any attackers who are out in the open from the high ground. Once you stabilize, you should start throwing utility. Sewers is usually a good spot to throw util into. From heaven, all you're trying to do is not force anything weird and wait for your team to coordinate a push. In this round, the Retake wall is limiting how much space they can take, and so we're able to set up behind the wall and push through, winning the round. Having a Madalena here is really useful for stuffing the push since you can paint long, sewer, and all the jump up areas, meaning that they can't scale to heaven easily. If the attackers manage to get up into heaven, having a Flavia to break this crossfire and make space onto site is very strong on retake. Your other option is to play around pillar, where you can stall for time and create chaos. You can actually get a lot of work done here, since if you don't go down peeking early, the attackers need to swing all the way around pillar to clear you, which leaves them open to your teammates from heaven and CT. Another option is to take sewer's control, which is a good idea if your sewer player is able to clear it or you want to take fights. In this round, I'm going to push through sewer to flank the attackers long, and so I'm able to play from sewer to make sure our team can counter push from here. Deciding between all these options, you basically want to see what your sewer player does. If he clears sewer, playing in that space to annoy the attackers in C long is very strong. Essentially, you want to support him whether he's fighting or falling back. In this round, I spot attackers long and my sewer player gets pushed off, so I throw supportive util to cover him and split their push. Now let's go over two alternate positions you can try using if you don't mind playing around some of its drawbacks. The first one is playing close long. From here, you'll have potential to take close range fights with some right hand peeks and a wall. The drawback is that you're prone to being run down and your direct control into sewers is weaker, so you'll need to rely on your team to feed you info on sewers. The other position is playing in this room. Here you'll have a right hand peek and some more distance from sewer and long, so the risk of being run down is diminished but is still present. On one hand, you're relatively safe to sewer, but on the other hand, your influence on sewer is minimal, so you'll have to trust your teammates around the sewer area. Now let's return back to the forward position and long to go over your options if you spot nothing. Your first option is to start rotating. This is good if your team spots them A or B, and you just want to make sure that you live for the retake. Your other option is to flank. This option is good if your team spots all 5 since you won't have to worry about a lurker. Just be careful for the attackers rotating back. Your last option is to simply just hold. This is a good option if you don't have complete info on the attackers and want to cover for lurkers. If they rotate back through long, you can do your normal hold, and if they rotate through sewers, you can annoy them from long. With all these positions in mind, let's go over some basic Michele setups. This setup right here is going to be your generic setup. The turret over sewers is pretty much mandatory, but the long turret can be a bit more flexible. You can change up the exact placement or throw it late once you confirm the attackers are actually coming long. This is an alternative sewer turret if the attackers from C long are breaking the standard sewer turret to allow the sewer push. Keep in mind, it's not as good since it's easier for the sewer people to break and it doesn't beam them as they're coming through the grate. For your trap turrets, placing one here and playing this right hand peek is strong. Your A3 will trigger, but you need to be hugging the box. So what you'll do is let the turret take contact and use its wall hacks and slow to get a good fight. Another spot is in this corner. You have to throw this right when the barriers go down or else the attackers will see it. The turret itself isn't visible until they round the corner and it'll take contact earlier than the other turret. Unfortunately, the corner turret doesn't give you A3 if you play these boxes. However, this turret will, and it'll act as a trap when you fall back to these peaks. Both of these 4 turrets will also give you A3 on this forward peak as well. This is the setup I would recommend. You want to do the first two turrets in this particular order, since placing a fourth turret later in the round will get rid of the oldest turret, and we'd rather keep our sewer turret over the long turret.
Defend your position.
Down, protector.
Some other notable turrets would be these two for if the attackers jump into this room. The bottom one will give you A3 while the top one will not. Lastly, this turret secures your position in heaven pretty well. For alt spots, from heaven you can aim in the middle here and throw.
Now, execute justice.
This ult won't cover the walkout from this room. It will get some parts along, but the attackers can shoot it without being too exposed. Players default and close heaven will get beamed, but will also do a lot of damage to the ultimate due to the lack of damage drop off. It will not cover sewers, but that also means attackers won't be able to freely shoot it from the safety of sewers. It'll also get them the moment they walk out. Throwing it lower is a lot easier to do on the fly and covers the same area, the only difference being it will see sewer but can be shot out easily from that position. The standard lineup has you in CT on the dumpster aiming at this red material. Then double jump, single jump, or just throw it standing. The lineup doesn't have to be precise at all, and it'll always pretty much land in the same spot. Depending on the angle, it can get them as they walk out this room. The coverage long is pretty bad, and since it lands too far to the left, attackers can still peek into CT without being beamed. The coverage default and close heaven is also pretty bad. It'll only get the cross between the two. It'll also not see into sewers at all. Here's a variant of the standard lineup that covers the same area, except it'll make it so that the attackers have to be exposed to CT in order to shoot it. First, go into the corner of the dumpster and aim in the corner where the red meets the wall. Then double jump throw.
Mighty Meow, execute justice. I'm flying.
Since it'll land in the middle, the attackers won't be able to easily peek into CT without being beamed, unlike the standard lineup, which lands too far to the left. This last variant will see more of long, and it'll see into sewer. To throw this, come to the edge of this box and aim at the corner of the green material, then double jump throw.
Now, execute justice.
This last lineup is my favorite and is the one I think you should be throwing. First, come to the edge of this box again, but aim at the middle of where this line would extend, then double jump throw.
Mighty Meow.
It should land high on top of this green beam. It covers this walkout really well. It'll actually see into the room. It has some coverage long while not being easy to shoot. It has some coverage default and close heaven. It will not be visible to sewer but still cover the walkout. Lastly, I like that throwing the lineup from the box means I have the option of retaking either through heaven or CT, whereas doing a lineup from dumpster kind of locks me into playing into CT. Knowing lineups is good and all, but how should you play when you have ult? For one, you want to make sure you stay alive to use it. This usually means you want to rotate heaven so you aren't stuck on site. The second part is when to throw it. You want to throw it when your team is ready to start taking space. Throwing it too early means the attackers can break it for free while you aren't gaining space. In this round, the ult is thrown too early since the defenders were not able to take any space with it. It's a combination of the bomb not being planted, the ult being exposed to sewers, the wind nade blocking the push, the knife scanning everyone, and maybe some miscommunication on the exact timing of the push, since the Flavia runs in without a trade. Ideally, once this knife comes out, the player's CTs should have just followed Flavia and broke the knife. Waiting out the knife is definitely valid, but any miscommunication on whether you're kiting or pushing can spell disaster. As you can see, they have majority of their team in CT, so if the attackers figure out that heaven is weak, or that CT is strong, they'll have good fights in heaven. So what needs to happen is the heaven guys need to bait, and the CT guys need to push. But instead the heaven guys go down and the CT guys don't push. Had they pushed, they could have maybe equalized into a 3v3 if they got both attackers in that room. Looking back, I realize there's blue fire stopping the push, but probably they should have gone on this window right here. They could just slow play this round and wait for bomb plant as well. Since we're on the topic of retakes, let's go over some ideas for retaking C. In previous videos, I mentioned how there's retaking stacked and retaking split. Retaking stacked is good if you have numbers or alt advantage, while retaking split is good if the attackers are entrenched on site and have to watch multiple chokes. However, on this site, I want to highlight some different concepts. Just looking at a generic retake from Heaven and CT, we can see that both teams can get very close to each choke. Often, if the attackers are looking to play proactively, their plan is to identify which side is weaker and take those fights. As a defender, that means the stronger side should push and the weaker side should bait if both teams are playing close to the choke. In this round, I'm scouting which side is weaker. The moment we spot majority of the defenders in CT, Meredith and I start pivoting towards Heaven. We scan one Heaven, and so when Coconut misses her shot, that's our trigger to double peek Fuchsia. Notice how we're taking a 3v2 fight here, so we have the numbers advantage. So the defenders in CT needed to push into the side room and start pressuring us, or they all needed to be playing a bit more passive, especially the Heaven players, until the bomb is planted. Also, Fuchsia needed to leave the knife radius, since there's really no reason she needed to be scanned for that long. She could have just backed up into CT. We do a similar thing later in the game, except they leave CT weak. Since I don't know if they're trying to bait me out, I wait for my teammate to double peek. So to summarize retaking, the strong side should push and the weak side should bait. If the bomb isn't planted, you have time to wait out the attacker utility, so wait for your opportunity to push. Also, don't waste your utility too early, you want to save it for when you guys are ready to push. Moving on, let's go over the last main position, which is sewer. Usually, Abaimo or Flavia will play here. For sewers, I would recommend running double stall nades because you really want the freedom to choose which nade you want to use. Sometimes it's better to get the damage straight up with a frag, and sometimes it's better to use the slow. When the barriers go down, you want to take forward sewers control and gather info. If they show presence, you want to use nades to take the fight, or fall back depending on how much pressure there is. Here, our Abaimo sees an isolated target and so uses a nade to take her out. If they 5-man long, an aggressive option is to flank. Your other option is to fall back and help site directly. If there is zero presence, you can flank or rotate early. I would really recommend flanking if they show presence elsewhere on the map though, or if you're confident. Flanking is really strong since a lot of teams have trouble dealing with flanks. Otherwise, you can do a normal rotate if you feel like you'll get punished on the flank or if you have ult. The last kind of secondary position you'll play is around this window spot. Here you are spotting for a sewer or updraft rush into heaven. You'll also be a fast rotator to the other sites. Stopping the updraft play into heaven is relatively simple. All you need to do is put an 8 on the ledge. That's the video for today. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below what I should cover in my next video.